Hello everyone, this is the Diatone GT M2 Marauder. Featuring 1104 6000 kV motors, TBS Unify VTX. This pre-production model came with a generic CCD camera, F4 Fury flight controller, 25 amp 4-in-1 ESC, two 25 volt 47 microfarad capacitors. Those clean up your video. XT30 for your battery connection. Out of the box, it comes with 1940 props, but Cyclone 2035 props work just fine. Bottom plate is over 3 millimeters. I'm getting 95 millimeters motor post to motor post. It weighs almost 81 grams.
Ah, dang.
So Diatone recently has been making their products and using some name brand parts that we all know and possibly many of you already have experience with and love. But the TBS Unify is known to be a very good VTX, so our video signal should be quite good, even on a little whip or linear or dipole antenna. I was a little bit surprised to find that they went with 1104 motors. We've kind of seen 1104 motors kind of go by the wayside. Not that I believe that's the case. I think there's a lot of life in 1104 and 1105 motors that we just haven't seen the right combinations used yet, and I've hinted to this in past reviews. We've also got an easy hatch, and I had to work on mine a little bit. So some of the things that you'll notice about mine, you out of the box won't notice or won't be the same. And one is I've got just grass and everything all over this. I've been flying it quite a bit. But normally out of the box, you'll find that these wires loop around that post and come in underneath and then through here. I had an ESC that was flipping out, and sometimes you would put it it kind of freaked me out quite a bit. But I think it was just damaged or it was just mismanufactured. You know, those things happen. It did fly. I bet you I put in 10 packs on it before I started noticing it freaking out a little bit. And I probably crashed it a couple of times. And I kind of felt guilty going back to them and saying, hey, I think something's wrong with the ESC. And sure enough, it wasn't 2 or 3 flights later. And I was having ESC and also flight controller problems. But the ESC probably caused the flight controller problems. but Diatone was nice enough to where they shipped me a new one. So I had to rework mine. Mine will look a little bit different than what yours will. So we've got the buzzer, and I located mine right here. That comes, I believe that comes loose, if I remember correctly, and then I just stuck it down here behind the camera. You may not be able to do that if your camera angle is quite a bit lower. So that's fairly tight where I've got it, but you can also, you know, put this somewhere else in the stack or relocate it back here. Find the space that you need in order to do it, or just stick it to the back of the camera. Possibly that might work as well. As far as the props go, I should have talked about that first. These props, you know, whenever we can get a little bit more prop, it's just always better. I don't know really what machine these props would work well for. I think they'd have to be relatively high kV, probably 2S, and a very light setup. Out of the box, this thing felt very sluggish with these props. Fortunately for us, props are temporary, so even if you get these, you can have some flying fun with these, and then when these are all bent up and mangled or broken, whatever have you, just go to a 2-inch prop. I really like these Cyclone props. They're a relatively new prop. I have found them to be very, very durable. I have bent the sin out of them as I have crashed this thing over and over and over again, and these are the same props I've been using the whole time. And you may find in that flight footage that you've already heard that or seen that you could hear oddities possibly in the props, and it's just because I bend them back and just keep flying them. With all those crashes, I could tell you that this machine is quite robust. We've got good camera protection right here. They show in the pictures a run cam, and I said in the quick specs this is a generic camera. Again, this is pre-production, so I don't necessarily think that you should take everything out of this review and say this is exactly what I'm going to get. I think the things you can depend upon getting are the motors, the ESC, the flight controller, and the VTX. I think you're going to get those things, along with the frame, of course, as well. I did think that the wire gauge that they used on the battery connection is quite small, especially if they're touting this for 4S. I did not fly it on 4S. I don't think there's going to be much of a purpose in flying a 2-incher on 4S. You'll probably get a little bit more out of it, but the weight of the added cell, if you're using an equal milliamp battery, is probably going to give you a little bit of a dragging feeling in turns, or it's going to come down out of flight or just not go up quite as far as you might expect. Also, you might notice my screws here. I crashed it once and I went out and I noticed that was loose. I don't know if they came loose here on the desk or if they just vibrated loose and I lost them in the field. I don't know, but a standard M2 screw will work, and they are fairly long ones that I use there. That probably came loose because I was moving this canopy up and down, and that's something I skipped over. Let me go back to that. So you take out these two screws, or you loosen them up enough to where they're not grabbing the canopy, and the whole thing lifts up. Now the benefit to that is that you can get into the stack and work without removing the rear two screws in order to get the whole cage off. But you will need to unplug the camera cable because it's not long enough to where you can get this all the way back, and I wouldn't expect that to be long enough to do that, but it is something you need to be aware of when you're working on yours, that you need to unplug the camera cable. Don't just keep pushing on it because you might end up damaging that connector or something of that nature. Things that I'm not a fan of. One, the PID tune it came with was terribly soft. There was no way I could fly it in the space that I fly in the way I want to fly with that tune. They're fairly adamant that that's the tune they want on the machine, and that's what you've seen on screen, but I worked up different PIDs, and I thought these PIDs were better, at least for these props with the batteries that I use and the flight style that I have. You may choose to use them. You may choose to use the one that may come on the machine when you buy it retail. Also, I'm not a big fan of using Phillips type screws on our quads. I believe hex is always better. These, you have to make sure that you get just the right size of Phillips head in order to get them as tight as we needed to. They use them also up here on our pod. These, of course, like I said, these are ones I put in. That's why they're hex. So I'm not a fan of that, but we could see that change when it comes to production. I'm not certain if these are out already. I think you can look at them and see them on websites to add to like wish lists on Banggood, or they're coming soon or something of that nature. This is the only one of the various micro models that they've got coming out that I have. They may send others. I don't know yet. There hasn't been a whole lot of communication because, again, I've been very busy. As I mentioned in one of my posts, I've just been swamped with work and life. We've had a lot of ball games. We've had a lot of swim meets. I've had a lot of late nights at work, so it's not a complaint. That's just how life goes. And when life goes that way, we just do less of this stuff. But but I'm hoping that things will get back to their normal flow and process, and I'll be able to post more regularly, including this one here. The battery strap that came with it is not, of course, the RCX. Somehow it came with one of those typical battery straps that doesn't have a buckle, and when I put it all back together, I didn't have a battery strap, so I grabbed this one and put it in there. You should notice also that the flight controller has the grommets that go through the holes, and that allows us, I don't know if you can tell, let me see if I can push on this in some way that the camera will. Hopefully you can see that. So we get some vibration dampening to our flight controller with that stack. I do wish, like down here at the bottom, it's probably most notable, they've got these little white like washers that are a couple millimeters thick, and there's 2 of them down here, and then there's 1 here, but underneath each little piece there's also these like half washers that are kind of beveled out so they fit up in the hole. So when you take your stack apart, you've actually got quite a bit to piece back together. I wish that it were just 1 piece rather than so many pieces. Like at the bottom you've got 3 here between the flight controller and the ECU, you get 2, and at the top this is 1 solid plastic piece, and your nut sits in the top, and then the VTX just is secured down with foam tape. I did add the strain relief onto the battery lead that did not come stock, and then I ran my antenna down over here, which I've done on another model here that I received recently. You may see these wires out here and think, oh my gosh, that's going to get snapped. I don't think so. In all my flights, it wasn't even all that close, really. I don't think those are going to move. I intentionally kind of tucked my VTX up here, and I created a little bit of tension. You'll see these wires aren't real loose in here, but give you an idea about these props. See how close they come to the rear. Hopefully that comes through in camera. They're very, very close, and that's probably why they went with those 1940 props. It gives them a little bit more clearance. I really think these props are better. I think probably any 2-inch prop is probably going to be quite a bit better than those 1940 props. I'm not a fan of the Hulky line in general, and especially when we get this small and something that weighs 80 grams or more, these just aren't going to quite cut it. I was pretty happy with the performance for a 2-incher, and I also thought that the flight time was pretty reasonable. But again, this is pre-production. You need to do your homework. You need to take a look around. Maybe some people that get production models will be posting their reviews soon. I'll put links to various places that I know are carrying this. You could probably buy it direct from Diatone first if you're in a real hurry to get this. I'm sure Banggood, Gearbust, you'll probably find them on Amazon as well. We might see these from Pyroflip or Race Day Quads as well. We'll see what comes of it. Diatone is one of the larger vendors, and they tend to be more reputable. That's why we see the parts and the partnering with TBS. That's very, very rare, partnering with TBS. TBS is very, should I say, they really like to keep their products close to the vest. So Diatone obviously had to go to some special arrangements in order to get that VTX included in this machine, and that's a good thing for us. Look at that, there's a piece of grass right there too. So as I clean my desk, that's really all I have to say about this machine. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please leave those in the section down below. I'll put some links down in the description if you care to check out this model. They've got quite a few images on the Diatone website, and I'm sure they'll find those elsewhere as well. Really showing you close-up macro pictures of all the different components and how they lay out. It's a good machine, you know, a little 2-incher. I think it's going to be solid. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.